Los Angeles, what's going on? Ramley, welcome to the Rams Skinny here on the LA Football Network. Joining me as always, the right-hand man, my man, Ryan Skinny T. Anderson. We're going to be talking all things Rams Cowboys today as the Rams travel out to Dallas to take off the boys. What's up, brother? How we doing?
Not great, man. My sore throat has turned into a cold, so I am dealing with a little bit of a foggy head and a sore throat, a scratchy voice. So I apologize out there, but I'm not Bijan Robinson. I'm in the game. I'm in the game today.
Nice. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you powering through. Hopefully we get through this quickly. You can get some tea and go back to sleep. But it's going around. Coach Lincoln Riley of the Trojans was out with pneumonia for the first 2 days of practice. First practices he's missed in his 20 years of coaching, he said on his press conference this morning. So it's going around. So hopefully you don't have pneumonia. Hopefully it's just a little cold and you can have a couple hot toddies tonight to help that go away. That's my prayer for you.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
But yes, thank you for powering through. We got a big game, obviously, this week as the Rams need to rebound after that tough loss. And it's not going to be easy going against this Cowboys defensive front and what they are able to do on the offense, specifically in the running game. So we are going to get into all of it here on the Rams Skinny. But first, shout out to our new partner, Underdog Fantasy. I'm sure you guys have heard of him, but if you haven't, you need to go to the Underdog Fantasy app or underdogfantasy.com. Make sure to use our promo code RAMS LAFB, all one word, RAMS LAFB. They're going to give you a match bonus up to $500. Put in $500, you get $500 free dollars to play with. Put in $25, you get $25 free to play with. So it's super fun. You can do fantasy, best ball, daily fantasy. What I like the best is the pick 'em. You can pick 2 to 5 players of any sport. So you can combine tonight's Thursday night game. You can combine Rams game players. So you can do Stafford over under on touchdowns. You can do Justin Herbert over under on yards. Really easy to do, really fun, and a really easy way to win some money. So underdogfantasy.com, Underdog Fantasy in the App Store or Google Play, and use our promo code RAMS LAFB. Tell them the guys at the Rams Skinny sent you. All right, Skinny. So Cowboys coming off a bye. They were just in LA the previous week as they beat the Chargers in prime time 20-17. And now they get the other LA team, but at home in Jerry World. Let's see if this LA team can fare a little better. What's your expectations of this game before we dive deeper and look at some key matchups?
Well, it's a lot like a lot of the other matchups this year where it seems like the Rams can stick in with any team out there, but kind of delving in just below the surface. This does look like a bad matchup for the Rams team. We'll get into kind of some more of the nitty gritty on that, but good defensive front, really good against gap scheme runs, which the Steelers were not last week. They came in 25th. The Steelers did. The Cowboys team, I think, is fourth best against gap scheme runs per EPA. That's coming from the 33rd team over there at SIS, Sports Info Solutions. But it just seems like a really tough matchup. But that said, we never know when they're just going to uncork one against a team like this. They put everybody on their heads in Seattle in week 1, looked really good against San Francisco there in week 2, and have kind of hung with some good teams all year long. So, this is a hard game to kind of pin the Rams down. The Rams are just a hard team to pin down in general. But it's a tough matchup. It's they're 6.5 point underdogs on the road. One of the largest spreads so far this season for them, since they've kind of proven not to be just a walkover team. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and it's 10 a.m. start, which is always, I feel like, for whatever reason, kind of tough for West Coast teams, although they had one already in Indianapolis early when they got the win in week 4. So hopefully that won't be an issue. Quickly, I'd be remiss if I did not give a shout out to Coach Sean McVay and his wife, Veronica, welcomed baby boy Jordan John McVay into the world on Tuesday. So shout out, Coach. So, got an extra teammate here headed to Dallas, and, it'll be obviously a different feeling for McVay on that sideline, and not that, his baby, I'm sure, will be there. I'm sure they won't make the trip this early on, but you still have those emotions as, your first game as a dad. So, just a little tidbit there, but shout out to the McVay family. Everyone seems to be healthy and doing well. So welcome, coach, to fatherhood. It is definitely the most rewarding thing, even more rewarding than Super Bowls and wins on Sunday. But looking at the game, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this is what's so hard about this Rams team, right? And we talk about it all the time, is they can beat anybody and they can lose to anybody. It's like, what Rams team is going to show up? And I feel good about this game, even though the matchup is not great, just because of the loss last week and how it ended. Like, if they would have came back, won that game against the Steelers, I would have been picking the Cowboys in this, because it was like, then they're due for their letdown game. That's the way the season's gone, right? Like a nice up high and a nice down low the week after. It's like there's no consistency week to week. So because they had that brutal loss and the way that they did lose with the costly mistakes, costly errors that they inhibited, I think they're going to go out and play a sound game this week in Dallas and show that they are a true potential playoff team, that everyone's going to get up high again. Like, oh, the 4-4 Rams, look at them, watch out. They're going to be great. And then we'll see the next week, maybe a letdown game. So we'll get into it, but I don't know. I feel like this is a very winnable game for this Rams team, kind of based on the high of Coach McVay being a dad and the what went down last week and how they're going to, build upon or learn from that.
Win for baby McVay there. That's going to be the chant there. Win one for Jordan.
Babe, what we could come up with a name, like a nickname, like Bebe Vay or something.
Bebe
Vay. Bebe Vay. What's that song? Bebe Vay. That's going to be hard to say, though. Anyway.
I think Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, they're going to keep you in games offensively, and this defense has played better than expected, well in circumstances, kept them in games in other circumstances. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that, one of the matchups that you got to be watching is the secondary that's, without Trevon Diggs and, some kind of lesser known names playing in the slot. They're also without Leighton Vander Esch now, who kind of will drop into coverage and cover that slot position. And so, I mean, I was looking at the depth chart. You got Deron Bland and Jordan Lewis, Stephon Gilmore, obviously, who everybody knows. Damone Clark there in for Leighton Vander Esch, who actually had a fantastic game, it looks like, against the Chargers and kind of keeping Austin Eckler in check. But, we've talked about Stafford and what a fantastic year he's having, but there are some statistics that really kind of stand out. I mentioned it on the last show. Lack of touchdown passes, just six touchdown passes thrown by Stafford so far this year. And it also, what Cowboys team is going to show up? Is it that early season where they're putting up 30, 40 points a game, or the last 2 weeks where they've just put up 30 points in 2 games, 15 points per game against the Chargers, whose defense is not fantastic, and against the 49ers, who have a really good defense. But which one of their offenses is going to show up for this game?
That's a great, real quick, just to jump in. That's a really good point too, because the Cowboys have been kind of that Jekyll or Hyde type team as well, just like the Rams in a way. Like they look really good 1 week, and then they obviously got blown up by the Niners, but didn't they lose to like Arizona also? Or it's like they just had like a bad loss there. And Dak is who he is. I think he's a good quarterback. He's definitely not a great quarterback. He's going to be serviceable, obviously, but he's not someone that can absolutely, or not can't, I should say, but is not someone that's regularly going to light it up. So yeah, I agree. I'll throw it back to you, but I just want to jump in because it's a great point. Like, which Cowboys team is going to show up, especially off a bye? You never know.
Yeah. And some of those other Stafford statistics that are kind of glaring is also the amount of pressure and sacks that he's taking. He's up there in the top 5, I think, in the amount of pressures that he's taking. And obviously this Cowboys defense is one of the most formidable front sevens in the league. Micah Parsons is doing fantastic this year once again. DeMarcus Lawrence up there as well. And I kind of alluded to it earlier about the running game. It's still kind of a question mark of what is Darrell Henderson and Ronnie Rivers going to be, or not Ronnie Rivers, but I'm blanking on the
Royce Freeman.
Royce Freeman. Thank you.
Yeah.
What do they bring into the game in this instance? Another shocking Stafford statistic, and this is one isn't necessarily on him, but 15 drop passes, which is one of the top, if not the top, amount of drops so far this year from a receiving core, I guess. And Puka Nacua is out there with 5, and Cooper Kupp had 2 last week, and Kyren Williams has had 3. So, 15 drops for Stafford, and those are drive killers for the Rams. So those are just kind of the unforced mistakes that this Rams team can't make against specifically the Cowboys defense, because they're not going to allow you a second chance. They're actually a fantastic defense across the board, but really good on first and second downs. And the Rams offense, that's kind of where they've struggled. They've struggled to set themselves up for a nice, easy 3rd and 2, or even just picking up the first down, on second down or whatever. And when you set yourself up in that 3rd and long situation, that's just when Micah Parsons can pin his ears back and just go for the quarterback. And that, if that's the kind of game we're heading into, no matter how good Stafford and those receivers are, you're just not going to be able to come away with the win.
Yeah, and we've seen this offensive line play, as the theme goes, better than expected against, vaunted defensive lines. We saw them, hold their own against the Niners. We saw them hold their own against the Eagles. And, there's obviously going to be some pressures and sacks that do get down. But overall, I think they've played really, well, all things considered. And, they get another big test this week. And the Chargers, for how porous their offense was against the Cowboys, only scoring 17 points. I think they only had like 240 yards of total offense. So they didn't do a lot right. But what they did do right, and then what blueprint they gave, was keeping Herbert upright until it mattered most in the final drive. And this is what the Rams can't do. And so they were able to protect Herbert in a sense of sacks. There was definitely pressures and hurries that got in there, but no sacks on Herbert at all until the final drive when they had to have it. And then you unleash Micah Parsons, Dexter Lawrence, and those guys, and they were able to, get home and sack Herbert. And then on the next play, pressure him, and he threw an interception to end the game. So the Rams, and we'll get a little more granular here, but the Rams obviously, and you want this in every game. So I know this is going to sound so obvious, but you don't want to be in a situation where it's a 1-score game and up to your offense to go down and win it. Not saying that Matthew Stafford is incapable, but that's where this Cowboys defense is great, when they know it's in a passing situation and they can just pin their ears back and go, like you alluded to. Because if they can avoid that, as you want to in every game, but specifically in this one, avoid that, I do think the offensive line can hold their own against this unit, because we saw the Chargers do it, and the Chargers offensive line hasn't been great this year. The Rams offensive line for most statistical categories has actually been better. And so if they can kind of take that blueprint, move the ball, as you mentioned, not set up 3rd and long where you're allowing that defense to pin their ears back, I think we'll see this offense have some success. And obviously that starts with the run game, so I won't talk a lot about it. 30+ carries. Let's see it happen again. I know they lost Skinny T, but
I wanted to ask you about that, because looking back at the Eagles game, they didn't run the ball. They were looking at that ferocious front seven and just said, no, we're going to avoid that altogether. And I think they rushed just somewhere in the teens, in the mid to low teens, somewhere in there. And they lost that game. I don't know if you can blame it entirely on the lack of running there, but what are your thoughts? Are they game planning to not run it? Just take your bias away. Are they game planning not to run against this, or do you think that they're going to try to attack it a little bit more like they did last week, very successfully there for a little while against the Steelers, at least?
I would think, and again, this is not what I'm not. Or this is what I would do, but I'm not saying it as I would do, but based on what game plans we've seen, and I agree, it seemed like when they were facing big pass rushes, for whatever reason, they went away from the run. When you look at the Niners game, when you look at the Eagles game, they kind of were like, all right, we're going to drop back more for whatever reason, and maybe try some more shorter stuff. But finally against the Steelers, who also have a very good front seven, obviously TJ Watt, one of the best in the business, and others on that defensive line, even without Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers and, Darrell Henderson off the couch and Royce Freeman off the practice squad, they actually did commit to the run against that unit and they saw success. So based on that and based on the success rate, I would think McVay is thinking we got to do that same thing against this because it gives us that opportunity to keep them on their toes and not put so much pressure on our quarterback in Matthew Stafford. So to answer your question, like obviously we'll see, and every week seems to be a flip-flop. Like one week, great, they sprint to the run, the next week they don't. So they're on track to not do it based on what they've done all season since they did it last week. Now they're up for a 15 rush game. But considering the style of defensive play, and I know you said, the Steelers obviously much worse against gap schemes versus the Cowboys. So obviously schematically it's differently. But when you just look at the pass rush arsenal, the similarities are there. I would think they want to run the ball more to, take the pressure off of dropping back. But who knows at this point, right?
Well, I just took a quick glance back at the Arizona Cardinals loss that they handed to Dallas. James Conner went for just under 100 yards, 14 carries. Josh Dobbs, their quarterback, ran for 55. Rondell Moore ran for 54 yards. And they had a couple other guys with a couple of carries, so that kind of varied and mysterious way of running, just kind of by committee, might be a good way to attack this game.
Yeah,
but kind of another side note to the gap scheme thing is the Dallas has struggled against zone running games. We saw it specifically against 49ers, who still run the zone heavy kind of game. And they struggle against that. And it's just a matter of being multiple. So, the McVay offense last year was so zone run heavy and they just flipped it. Now they're so gap run heavy and they still run zone at about half the clip. But at a much lower rate compared to the rest of the NFL. But just being multiple on offense where you can switch it up. We're not gonna lean so much onto one thing. We're gonna attack the defense where they're weakest instead of just kind of doubling down on what they want to do, which has just been the kind of an overarching theme of this year, especially, and McVay kind of in general. So I'll be interested to see if they are able to kind of employ extra, kind of get away from their own tendencies and surprise this Dallas team a little bit to keep themselves in contention on offense.
Out of curiosity, and I don't expect you to know this answer. If you do, I mean, you're obviously know your stuff, but in your opinion, why do you think the Rams have gone more gap this year? Do you think it's the philosophy of Ryan Wendell coming over as the new offensive line coach? Do you think it's, hey, we got to try something different? It was the style of run that Kyren Williams brings. Like, why do you think, just in your personal opinion, that they've, for all of McVay's years, have been so zone heavy, and then now they've gone much more gap?
Well, I mean, the short answer is that the league started figuring out how to slow down that zone. So it was just kind of the ebbs and flows of the league. Is everything was kind of going towards that Shanahan and McVay system, and then defenses were starting to figure out how to combat against that. So it's kind of like a horizontal, outside zone, specifically horizontally stretching you versus vertically stretching you, and you look at a team like the Chiefs who have started to, with like specifically Isaiah Pacheco, it's we're getting away from a finesse kind of running game into that just kind of like just a ferocious kind of runner, who's just we're bigger offensive line. They're just gonna punch those holes, and defensive lines were getting lighter so that they could kind of get more horizontal and more athletic, smaller guys. And now, it's just kind of the ebbs and flows of the season, to put it shortly. And those kinds of runs were working for certain teams last year. And I think that they just picked up on that. And, McVay knew he needed to revamp the running game just because it was not working. Since Todd Gurley, really, even in 2021, it wasn't the running game that got them to the Super Bowl. We'll just put it that way. And then in 2022, there was nothing working. So, he's learning slowly and surely that this is another tool in the tool belt that he can employ. And you don't need an MVP running back to do so. So that's
Yeah,
just kind of my quick thoughts.
no, 100%. And I think, and this is no knock on, Kyren Williams or Cam Akers or any of those guys, because everyone has a different running style. But, in order, and you mentioned it with Isaiah Pacheco a little bit, is, in order to run the zone, you have to be a really patient runner. And so it's a different style of back even that can successfully run the zone. Like a Todd Gurley, you have to have great vision and patience. And some backs just want to hit the hole as hard as they can. And if it's not open, they're just going to run people over and still get 4 or 5 yards just because their power want to get into it. And as a zone, you can't do that. You think back to I'm drawing a blank on his name. The old Steelers, not old, but the former Steelers running back that was like so patient, just like, sidestepping, almost just waiting for the hole to open and then hits it. And so
Le'Veon
that's kind
Bell?
of the Le'Veon Bell. Thank you. Yeah. I was going to say Ronnie Bell. And I was like, oh, that's a former Bronco. So that I think is a huge piece of it too. And, real quick on radio, thank you all for hanging out with us. We got to take a quick break. So we'll be back at the bottom of the hour with more LA football talk. So thank you all on the Mitre 1090. Talk to you all after the break. But continuing on with that thought, I think there was maybe a realization that with the running backs on the roster at the time, still Cam Akers was here, and we didn't see a ton of success with him in zone. And then Kyren Williams, who himself has even said early on, like he needed more patience, like he was trying to hit holes too fast. Well, in the gap, you can do that. You can just hit the hole. It's like this is a counter play out on the C gap, or this is a dive play up the A gap, and you just hit that gap as fast and quick as you can. So I think it's also personnel wise based on who's on the offensive line, but also who's your running back and what their skill set, and not trying to fit that round peg in a square hole, or I guess square peg in a round hole, in a sense. So maybe that has something to do with it too. If we're just reading between the tea leaves, I don't know.
Yeah, no, and we've seen that it's been able to work, and I just think that McVay just has this thing of like he finds a tendency and he just wants to keep hitting it. We'll see. I'm interested to see how the running game is deployed against the Cowboys. We both are, and my guess is that they're going to kind of shrink back and try to rely on the receivers, the passing game, to try to move the ball more. And I think that might not be the wrong answer, but what I want to see from the Rams team is a robust and explosive offense, regardless of how they plan to do it. And it just hasn't really manifested itself very many times. And the Dallas offense, and I don't think it's really the players' faults necessarily. I think it's probably a McCarthy thing. Is that they haven't been terrifying. It's not the kind of offense that you have to keep off the field necessarily for long stretches of the time. I think if the Rams are able to get up on them early on, I think that's probably their best course of action with this team. If this is like, as you were saying, if this is going into the fourth quarter, a tight game, I'm definitely leaning towards Dallas. But if they're able to go, into the second half with a 10, 13, 14 point lead, I would feel a lot better about this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you can deploy some different things, and yeah. So I want to get to the defense before we wrap this up, because we haven't talked a ton about that. But the last thing I'll kind of say on offense is really want to see, and we talked about it a few days ago, but really want to see Tutu Atwell more involved in the offensive scheme. I know we just hammered the run game talking about that as a necessary, as a necessity for this, but I think having Tutu involved more besides one target is going to open things up as well. And obviously we haven't even seen him like really used in the deep ball game as much. Obviously his touchdown last week was a 35 yarder, but it wasn't necessarily a go route. He kind of did an undercutting because it was an underthrown ball and just went up and got it. So would love to see him on a couple goes that are using maybe, mesh concept or something, using some guys over the middle, and then maybe, Cooper Kupp or Nacua on like a deep post that can pull the safety and then gets him going. So I think that's one thing I would love to see is, a little more Tutu. We saw a lot of Tutu early, and now we're fading out Tutu. So let's get him back in here.
Yeah, I'd love to see that speed, where he was in motion. He caught that one swing pass that wasn't quite a touchdown. I just want to see kind of more of that kind of thing, just because I like seeing him at full speed as he crosses the line of scrimmage, and just how much trouble defenses may or may not have trying to get a hold of that guy at that point.
Yeah.
It's his best quality. I mean, it's a big reason they drafted him. I would say maybe the biggest reason they drafted him was just his
Maybe
burner.
the only reason.
Maybe the only reason. And just let's see it. Let's see that speed. But
yeah, and you had mentioned the Cardinals, how they were able to get the running game going with different, I mean, Rondale Moore's a receiver, and he was 50 yards rushing or whatever. So I think that's another piece of that too is, doesn't have to be your standard Royce Freeman with 12 carries, Darrell Henderson with 9 carries, run up the middle, do a few things on the outside. Like, let's get back to, I'm rocking the Bobby Trees shirt for a reason. Like, let's get some of those end arounds, get Tutu in motion, going on jet sweeps, like you mentioned in that Cincinnati game. So some exotic looks from the run game, including Tutu, I think would be a good thing. And maybe even you throw in a Puka Nacua with his Nike Monarchs, around the end too, with that, 20 mile per hour speed he displayed last week. You never know.
Wow, we got up to that fast, huh? That's incredible.
I don't know if that's accurate. I saw someone put that on Twitter, but I did not fact check it. So everyone can call me out if that's incorrect. I have no idea. I did what a lot of people do incorrectly and just quote tweet someone without actually doing my own research. So, but anyway, let's talk defense, shall we, before we wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you look at the Cowboys offense. Obviously, they want to run the football. That's what they want to do. Again, the Chargers kind of gave a good blueprint of how to slow this offense down. They finished the game, I believe, with just a touch over 300 yards of total offense, but they kept him under 100 yards rushing, which is impressive to do against this team. They were able to get some pressure on Dak Prescott, and their receivers never really went crazy, right? They obviously still gave up 250 or so yards through the air. But 20 points, it wasn't like an offensive explosion. So, this Rams team, with what they have, like, what do you expect or what do you want to see specifically from whether it's the linebacking group, whether it's the front four, whether it's the back end that you think can really kind of replicate that and slow down Dak, Tony Pollard and company?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tony Pollard is really the key for the Cowboys in this game. And, the Chargers held him to just 30 yards rushing, but he caught for 80 yards passing. I don't know if he broke a big play. Let me double check that. Well, he had a 60-yard long, so yeah, that's a big play there.
Yeah, that's a couple missed tackles over the middle, so that'll do that.
Well, and that's the thing I really wanted to talk about with the Rams defense is they're now third. They have the third most missed tackles in the league right now. Just the Houston Texans and the Carolina Panthers are ahead of them just by a couple of missed tackles even there. And so that's something that you really got to clean up against this game, because a guy like Tony Pollard is really going to make you pay, as the Chargers found out. A guy like CeeDee Lamb. I mean, none of these guys are, a Deebo Samuel where they're just going to shed blockers or, shed tacklers left and right. But they have enough speed and they have enough explosiveness, across the board with their weapons that they can definitely, put some yak up on the Rams. And Ernest Jones is, I think, your prime candidate. That needs to be the guy that's flying all over the field, playing with his hair on fire, making these plays. But you're looking at Michael Hoyt in coverage there. You're looking at some Russ Yeast, who's he's an incredibly hard tackler. So I think that he's got to have a big game. So that's really what you got to clean up, is making sure that they're going to get the ball to Tony Pollard, but making sure that he doesn't squeeze out and pick up an extra first down here or there, keep a drive alive, keep a third and long alive, because they just couldn't bring him down. So yeah, what's your defensive thoughts?
Yeah, you mentioned the missed tackling, and on PFF they're rated 28th with a 37.2 tackling grade overall as a team. So it's definitely still somewhat of an issue that we've seen in years past, and it's definitely something that can expose them and make them pay against this team in opportune times. And so, you got to clean that up. in whatever way. These are professionals. A lot of people will always say, it's coaching, it's coaching. I don't necessarily believe that. I mean, you mentioned Houston's the team below them. I don't think anyone thinks D'Amico Ryans is a bad defensive coach and doesn't know how to coach guys at the tackle. So I think it's more of, guys being professionals and getting the guys down and wrapping up, so many players nowadays, and this starts at the collegiate level, and it drives me crazy. Don't use their arms anymore. It's just all diving and just using their shoulders, and it's like they don't have arms. You got to wrap up. Like that's fundamental football you learn back in high school. I remember chin to far hip, wrap up and take down, right? That was the old slogan. So see more of that. But yeah, I think philosophically, it starts up front, what they're able to do in the trenches with Aaron Donald and company, and whether they're able to, get Dak uncomfortable. We know he throws interceptions. I think he's on pace to be on last year's where he led the NFL in interceptions. So we know that's certainly something that they can get done if they're able to get pressure in his face. And then on the back end, like, what do we see from Akhello Witherspoon? And, is Derion Kendrick going to be the guy again who really has not had a slew of good games as of late? Are they going to make a move to get some other guys more time? And so what does that look like on that back end? So, I think there's a lot that they can do that they can. This isn't an offense that scares me. But then again, I thought the defense didn't play terrible last week, but they did give up 24 points to a Steelers offense that has been pretty awful all season long. So they just need to play sound, fundamental football, get some pressure on the quarterback, and, play real man sound on the back end.
Yeah, this game really could come down to turnovers, like you were saying with Dak Prescott, and Stafford's not immune to those as well. We've definitely seen some interceptions from him, and the Rams' defense have not been forcing the turnovers. Just 5 total turnovers so far on the year. So that would be a really great statistic to start boosting up a little bit. And it does start up front, and it's going to be a clash of the Titans down there. Zach Martin, I think, is doing a great job this year, and then Aaron Donald heading up against him. It's going to be a really good matchup to watch to see if Aaron Donald can kind of wreck the game. And he obviously, he's getting double teamed and triple teamed in some instances. So I'm not taking anything away from him, but there are some games that he's able to get through and get to the quarterback, and love to see him get a sack on Dak Prescott in a big moment, end a drive or something like that. And I think the Rams are always going to play close games this year. I think everything's going to be narrow, everything's going to be tight, and that's kind of thing that could flip a game around, get them some good field position, set them up on offense, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think that's my thoughts on the defense. I don't think I think CeeDee Lamb is really their only big threat in terms of a wide receiver. Tony Pollard, got to stop him. Other than that, I think just kind of keeping Dak Prescott from being able to make big plays outside of the pocket, and we've talked plenty about the edges, so we don't need to go into that. We're coming up on this trade deadline, guys. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, a few days away, the 31st, Halloween, right? So if they win this game, I'm sure there'll be some conversations and some phone calls made. And if they lose this game, I'm sure there'll also be some phone calls and conversations, but maybe different ones in terms of selling as opposed to buying. But we shall see. That's a conversation for after the game. Let's end it with this. Score predictions. Skinny T, who are you taking in this one?
I'm taking the Cowboys in this one. I apologize out there to the Rams Nation. I'm usually a homer on this one, but I think this is a tough matchup. As I said, my score prediction, I'm going to say it's going to be 24 Dallas and a 17 points by the Rams. We didn't talk about the special teams, the kicker, the new kicker at all.
I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that.
Okay. All right.
Don't you worry. So
right,
24-17. So the Cowboys cover. They cover the 6.5 point spread per you. All right. Well, I'm going to be a homer. because as I said at the top of the show, Sean McVay just had new baby boy, Jordan John McVay. He's a brand new dad. You get that dad strength in you when you become a new father. You'll feel it soon, Skinny T. And there's something about it that electrifies the people around you or maybe makes them thankful they're not a dad. I don't know. Maybe it says different things. But either way, it's going to inspire that Rams locker room. And coming off that tough loss, we've seen week in and week out a different Rams team. And when they come out after a loss, they come back with a big win the following week. I think Lucas Havrisik, the new kicker, signed off the Minnesota Vikings practice squad, kicks the game winner. I know I said the Rams don't want to be in that situation down at the end of the game, but it's going to happen. They're going to drive down, and Lucas Havrisik is going to kick the game winner. They wouldn't be down. I guess I should say they'll be tied. So a little different scenario because they can still run the football. 23-20, Rams, your winner in Dallas.
I love it. He's a former Arizona Wildcat. I think if he kicks that winner, that'll be the nickname we'll give him is Wildcat.
There, I like that. Like Wild Thing, but Wildcat.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Well, there you go. So Skinny T's got the Cowboys winning, got the Rams winning. What do you guys say? Comment below. You can vote on the poll that we have on the show in this article. But thank you all, as always, for hanging out on the Rams Skinny. Make sure to head to LAFBnetwork.com for all of our Rams coverage all season long. And obviously, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not, go to Rams LAFB YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button as we're trying to grow that channel as well, plus all of our other team channels you can find there. For Skinny T, I'm Ryan Darrett. Everyone have a blessed weekend. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you all afterwards, hopefully with the Rams victory. Talk to you all soon.